Welcome to Blueprints for Brilliance Coaching Insights, a podcast by coaches for coaches. Our guests share their hard-won wisdom to help you grow your coaching business and create a life of success. So get ready to unlock the blueprints to your success. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today on our newest episode. I'm excited to introduce you to a wonderful lady. Her name is Rain Zaben, and that is also the name of her business. She is a spiritual transformational coach. So welcome to the podcast, Rain. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Jeanne.
So tell us how you became a coach, why you became a coach. There's usually a story behind how you got to where you are. So tell us all about it.
Okay. Ooh, it's so interesting. Like everyone has, as humans, we've got many different pockets of reality. So I'm like trying to choose which pocket of story reality because it's all many different angles. I basically come from a family of intuitives, and my grandma was a healer, a spiritual person. She can be in her body here, but see, like she could travel through time. It was a very exotic childhood. And so, of course, I was brought up with a few of her gifts. But to me, she was like amazing. She would find dead people, like people would come and say, I can't find my brother, which was one of the incidents. And then she would be like, I don't know, I can only see them in a dark space. And then it turns out they were in the morgue already. Yeah, in a car accident. So stuff like that. So this is what I was observing as a child all the time. And I was in awe of this woman who wasn't only in the 3D, but was in some other realm, constantly talking to guides and doctors from other realms to help people who would call her from all over the world, be like, I'm paralyzed or I've got arthritis, and she would fix that. I would see her heal people like that. And so I naturally would put my hand on people and they would feel better, except that I would start to feel the mess. I would feel their pain. I would start to feel all that. And in time, as a teenager, I decided to study Reiki so I can understand, so I can differentiate my energy from somebody else's. As an empath, I was like absorbing everybody. And at the time I was an interior designer. I chose to be an interior designer and study it because I always wanted to bring joy and happiness to people. So I was like, okay, what's the best way? I'm like, they're home. So I got into interior design and I worked as an interior designer for 15 years. And I was working also on site building like hotels and all that. But my favorite part was homes. So I would love to sit with couples who were not getting along and then have a bunch of questions to ask them, like psychological questions, to design their home to bring them back together so that there's more harmony in the home. Little did I know that was leading me towards the human home, their body. And so I had these gifts from my grandma. I was in awe of her. I was in love with love. I was in love with soulmates. And so I went out to do this interior design work for them. And I studied Feng Shui and Vastu in the process so that I could energetically also help their home. And at the same time, I feel until today, I would walk into a space and I can feel if there's negative energy pushing me out or if it feels really nice in the home. And somehow I would be able to shift the energies. I didn't know that I was doing that. I just would do it. Then one beautiful day, I finally thought I met my soulmate. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, which is the Saturn return. And it just so happened that my supposed soulmate that I was searching my whole life for was a narcissist, which I didn't know what that was. I had no idea. And so a whole upheaval of my life happened. I have actually wrote a book about it called Happily Ever After. And it was the biggest shock of my life. I was suicidal. Everything, my happy, joyous self disappeared. It was so disturbing. My life was just upside down. Everything I believed to be true was not true anymore. And all the friends that I was always there for just left me in this space because I don't think they understood how to care for the caregiver. So basically, after the narcissistic abuse, everything changes completely. And I kept going to different therapists, psychologists, and nobody knew. This was like 19 years ago. Nobody really knew about narcissism and nobody knew what was happening. And I was living in Dubai at the time and nobody could help me except one person. She was a neuro-linguistic programming practitioner who just finished with Richard Bandler, the founder, and moved to Dubai. And I was just like asking God, I'm like, I need help because I want to end it all. I was desperate to end it all. And I found this, I'm like, this is my last shot. And I have a deep feeling that this is going to help me. I went to this woman, she did her magic. and the sense of suicide disappeared. And the knowledge about narcissism started to show up. Then I met a psychologist. She was the only one who was like, oh, that's narcissism. What the hell is that? Started to research it. And then I decided I'm done with interior design. I'm going to go save every woman in the world.
That is a very big, noble idea.
And so I went on a crazy rampage, stopped interior design, and I went and got certified with Neuro-linguistic programming. I went to Richard Bandler himself. And that's how my career started 18 years ago. And it was based on helping women find their truth, find their confidence and their self-assurance, and not to be a people pleaser like I was or a codependent like I was. And as I was helping them, I was helping myself in the process. So that's the story of how I got here. And then I started to understand all this energy healing that I have, that I can just put my hands on someone and heal them. But I had a boundary set by then. I understood that I can't just help anyone, especially if they're narcissist and I feel weird and junky inside. But then I also understood that I'm able to see people's wounded child. So I would be interacting with people, which a lot of empaths do. I would interact with their wounded child, wanting to give them unconditional love, ignoring and neglecting the adult that they are, that they're very harmful. And so this dove me into, I sat in helping women for over 10 years. And then I shifted to, okay, now I need to upgrade myself from the narcissist darkness and go into a higher realm of being. That's my story.
Wow, that is amazing. Love that your grandma gave you your gifts, or some of them. I think that's beautiful. And we have some clients who are interior designers, and see how changing people's environment can be really effective in helping with their relationship. I think that makes total sense. But they probably didn't know how much of that was you.
I don't think so. I didn't even know because I came up, I had like over 70 questions to ask them. I don't know where those questions came from, but it would be like, I would like to meet them and I'd have all these questions to be able to design their home according to their answers in hopes that they would rekindle the love through these questions.
That's amazing. Wow. I'm sorry you went through what you went through, but I do think that sometimes people need to go through some of those horrific experiences to become who they are, to understand, to overcome, to build their confidence, to break out. And sounds like that's exactly what you did.
Yes, I did that. There's something I'll have to share. So after all that, and I decided I'm going to move to Egypt because that's where my parents were living. I'm going to go move to Egypt. I owned it was partnership with in an art center. So I used to also give art to kids and adults. And so I decided that's what I'm going to do while doing NLP and Reiki together. But I hadn't really worked on myself, Jeannie. It's the wounded healer kind of style where, oh, I'm wounded, I'm just going to help everybody. And I would just get the information, work on myself a tidbit, and then I couldn't wait to give it to others. I think it's a typical empath, a wounded empath style. I'll get the information, but my purpose is to help. Only to discover then I did marry somebody else who was, but this time a covert narcissist. And that's when I learned what covert was. And it was such a big shock. And I refused to see it because I was helping my clients, but I was in the same hole again. And after that was like an 8-year marriage or 7-year marriage. After that, I got divorced. And I was like, I never spent enough time with me because I didn't know how to sit with me. I didn't know that I had to do anything for me ever. It was always for everybody else. And so I sat for another 5 years going through all my limiting beliefs, all my pains. And let me tell you, Jeannie, it is so much harder to work on yourself than helping others do it.
I wholeheartedly agree. Wow. So tell me a little bit now, who do you work with now and how do you work with them?
So I work with light workers and empaths. So I work with people who may have gone through narcissism, but may not have, and they've overpassed it already, but they're just stuck somewhere. They're stuck not knowing where to go. So I work with the people who already have a lot of knowledge, have a lot of understanding, and who are maybe in service of others. And it doesn't have to be in the coaching realm. It also can be any kind of service. You could be working in a Pizza Hut. You could be a doctor. You could be a lawyer. But you are there caring for others, but you're an empath doing it. And it's helping the empath find a kind of their superpower. So I love working with empowering empaths and light workers to find their personal light, therefore being of great value to whichever realm they've decided that they're passionate about working in. This is the main idea, and I do it through channeling. So at some point I recognized that there's all this information constantly coming in, but I lived in so much doubt that I wouldn't trust it. I was so doubtful. No, my mind has to come in and this doesn't make sense. And then I started to let go. And as I would share with a client, like I'd have a client and I just hear their story. And what happens is as I'm hearing their story, I'm hearing another story. I'm hearing their essence speak. And I'm seeing the gap between who they are and their essence and how far they're off or not. And I just basically start to shift their paradigm a little where they're closer to their essence. And then they just feel more okay with who they are, even if who they are is shameful and guilty. I'm okay being shamed. I'm okay with just who I am, which gets us closer to the essence. And then I just start to channel information. Sometimes somebody who's passed is in the room. Sometimes it's just information. I call it divine inspiration because I was like, is this a guide? Is this an angel? What are you? And so it just feels more of this information that would come through, and it doesn't feel different than me. It just feels like my own thoughts. And so also I help people understand what intuition is, and it isn't a foreign voice and it isn't a foreign being. It's simply going from doubt to trust and trusting whatever it is that we feel to be true. So that's the idea, is just bringing people home to trusting themselves, their bodies, their power, and specifically light workers and empaths, because these are the kindest people on the planet. And they're the ones that deserve to feel more confident and attuned to themselves because they're the ones helping all of us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we don't recognize how much doubt and fear and negativity that we have in our heads and in our bodies and in our life. Because I was talking to somebody the other day, and let's say work, for example, we're constantly focused on what isn't done and then beating ourselves up for it. And then it's taking us longer to get it done. Instead of, if we were in the right space, like you're talking about, we could just say, oh, that's not done. Okay, I need to do it. And it's going to get done here, and take away all of the frustration and the pain and the beating yourself up over. So it sounds like a simple concept, but it's very difficult.
It is very difficult because the program from childhood has taught us that whoever we are and whatever we feel is wrong. So from schooling systems to even parents who didn't know any better would be like, oh, no, you don't want to kiss your uncle or your aunt. You have to. It's rude. So that intuitive nature of I'm not comfortable with that energy, even if my parents like them, I'm not comfortable. There's never a respectful way of dealing with a child and their intuition or how they feel. We're like constantly disciplining. Also, the schooling systems, it's a very competitive system. And so you can never be okay with you. It's easier, like when the program says, fix your thoughts all the time. You are wrong. We are right. How scary it feels to try to decide for a split second that you're right. It feels like you're stepping in fire, and that it's a terrifying feeling. I've gone through it a million times. It's terrifying to trust what I see to be true, to trust what I feel to be true, because it just seems everybody else is feeling and seeing the opposite. So now I'm not going to belong. I'm going to be spat out. I'm going to be alone, which is our biggest nightmare. And it's less of trying to, how I see it is trying to shift who I am or stick by what I want and argue with others. And it's more about me coming to terms with liking the bad aspects in me. So when I discovered I'm an anxious attachment style, which is a horrible style to be, obviously, but when I discovered I'm an anxious attachment, I started panicking because I'm like, how can I stop being that? I don't want to be this anymore. I don't want to be this kind of person that's obsessed with a partner or obsessed with friends. And the fear of being it was so intense that my next best step was to be, you know what? I'm an anxious attachment. That's it. That's all I have to do. I am. And therefore, anyone who asks me, I'll be like, the reason I act this way is I'm an anxious attachment and I have no problem with it. And I had to write a list of all the ways in which I love being an anxious attachment. Instead of getting rid of what is deemed wrong, it's becoming one with what I have deemed or the world has deemed wrong. And since then, anxious attachment just left my body. I don't know how or why. It just decided, okay, we're done.
Wow. Yeah. Like you said, if you stop fighting it and just accept it and then move on, that can be that relaxing release. Okay, that's who I am. And that's the way it is.
Yes. And it's a freedom. So what I love the most is the freedom. We don't give ourselves the freedom to be who we are, even if you're anxious attachments. So what does that mean and who cares?
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what was it?
Anxious attachment.
Are there a list of different things that people would be?
Yes, there's the avoid attachment, there's the anxious attachment, and then there's the one that everyone strives to be, a secure attachment. Okay? So an anxious attachment basically means somebody who wants to be heard, loves quality time, wants to be loved, wants to have always a partnership or a partner in their life to do things with. So anxious attachment, I make it sound a lot prettier. But in the books, it doesn't sound that pretty. It's just like somebody who you need to find your own center. You can't be attached to others. You're so sensitive. You want to be around everybody. But I discovered that, hey, that's really cool. I love being around people. And I love attaching to somebody. And that's just who I am. Avoidant attachment are the people who will want you and then will push you away out of a fear, right? So they're avoiding intimacy. And so as long as you're playing the game of I'm hard to get, they want you. When you finally give in, they want to avoid you because they can't deal with emotions. I just relate them. To me, not all of them are, but to me, they're closer to what narcissism feels like, right? Where you're stay away from me emotionally. The more you love me, the more I need to run away. And then the third, secure attachment. The secure attachment can work with all kinds of attachments, but they're so secure within themselves. They're so fine with themselves that if they have an avoidant in their life, it wouldn't matter if that person wants to go or come. They know it has nothing to do with them. If there is an attached person to them who's needing their time and their energy, it won't mean that there's something wrong with them either. They'll just know the difference. So everybody wants to become a secure attachment, of course. Like how beautiful to just be cool with everyone and not have it mean anything about yourself. But that's not really the case. So fine, I am an anxious attached. I'm anxious all the time. So what? Not going away.
It's not going away. Now, it doesn't sound like it. Tell me a little bit about now, when you work with clients who come to you, is it usually like one session or a series of sessions or over time, or it just evolves as need be?
It really does evolve as need be. So a lot of times I've noticed in the past years, clients who are not in the narcissistic abuse, they need like months on end. The higher realm of now they're out of that, but they're stuck. It's 3 to 4 sessions, basically. It's not even that much because they're so aware. So anything that's channeling through me for them, or if any modality shows up for me to do EFT or a hypnosis or any of the million tools I have, they're so open to receiving it because they've already received their own wisdom, right? So they're just looking for, okay, I have a blind spot I can't see. And so it just takes 4 to 5 sessions. And then every 6 months, maybe they'll come up because something else shows up, like everyone. But it's not a consistent state of being. Yeah, I wouldn't like anyone to fully depend on me.
Wow. Okay. So if people want to reach out to you because they need your help, how do you want them to do that?
They could reach out by email, rainzaben8, the infinity sign at gmail.com. They could reach out by Facebook Messenger. They could reach out through WhatsApp. Yeah. Even on Instagram.
That's good to know. But we'll put some of those in the show notes so that people can reach out to you to get your help, because it sounds like you have an amazing full toolbox full of things that can help people from where they are get to where they want to be. I have to ask you, I have 2 questions to ask, but one is, how did you get the name Rain?
Okay. My original name is Ran. That's my birth name. But in the home, they would call me all the time Rainbow or Rain for short. In time, I just adopted the name Rain from a very young age because I'm like, it's more me than anything else. And that's where the titles of my books, my website, everything is that. Yeah. So that's how Rain came along.
And remind us about your book name. What's the name of your book?
I have 2 books. One of them is Happily Ever After. That was my my true story. And another book is called Discover the Gifts of Your Disempowered Self. And that has every modality, most of the modalities that I've ever studied in a book. So somebody could just take the book and self-help and heal and work through and just come to a sense of self-acceptance, basically.
I love that. That's fantastic. Okay, one last question. If you could provide one tip to make the world a better place, what would that be?
No fears can live in your body without you asking for those fears to be there to support you in something. Recognize that fears are an illusion, and they're an illusion to give us something to play with on this planet. Trust yourself above all else. There's no one else that has a truth like your truth. There's no reason to believe anybody's truth over yours. Your truth is as powerful as everybody else's. It doesn't matter if 100 people believe somebody else's truth and one person believes in yours, your truth is still prominent. So I believe that if everybody could just go in and be okay with who they are, then I'd be okay with everybody else. If I am fearless, basically.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Rain, I am so grateful that you joined me today and so excited that I get to learn so much about you and all your modalities and how much of a difference you're making in the world. So thank you for what you do. Thanks for joining us today on Blueprints for Brilliance Coaching Insights. We hope you're leaving this episode with inspiration to take your coaching business and your life to the next level. If you found value in this episode, we would love it if you would subscribe and share it with someone else who you think might benefit from hearing it. Thanks, and we'll see you in the next episode.